Hello everyone, and welcome to this explanatory video about test 1 that it is scheduled to be carried out this coming Thursday during the workshop time from 1 to 2 p.m. So the purpose of this explanatory video to explain exactly everything about the test and to be sure that you be sure about everything. So I need you to be aware of the test, the structure of the test, the areas of the test, and of course, you know the timing of the test. So everything should be very clear to you. Now, based on this, I'm going to share a PowerPoint slides, and I will go over the areas. And also, I will go over the structure, and I want you please to follow with me this. If you have any questions, just email me, or you can ask me in my tutorial during the workshop, the tutorials, or you can ask Mr. Obian. If Mr. Obian, update you in that, that's fine. Otherwise, we will manage to update you in anything you need about this test. All I want to say that test 1 is actually the first test, and I want you to be, everyone to be very comfortable about it and do very well on it. That's what I mean. So let me please share my screen now. So this is actually the test, and it covers only week 1 and week 2, as you know. And when I say week 1 and week 2, we are talking about the specialness, and we are talking about the interest rate risk and the risk matrix. Now, when we come to week 1, we're actually talking about this issue, which is the theory of financial intermediation. Now, remember, when we talk about financial intermediation, and from this slide, we know that the financial institution can be a broker, asset transformer. There is something called primary securities. There is something called secondary securities. There is also, during this process, there is what you call some concepts like negative externalities. What do we mean by negative externalities? Means the impact on the third party that not is involved in the contract when the financial intermediation fails. We talked about another concept called delegated monitors, and what are those delegated monitors? Why the bank or the financial institution work as a delegated monitor, and what they gain from that, collecting information. They use also information for them. And we talked about so many issues here, and all of those actually either in the workshop or either in the tutorial. Now, this is the second part of week 1, which is actually the issue of the specialness. And the specialness, we divide them to 4 areas, which is, we call them the general areas and the institutional areas. And every one of those have been discussed in details. You have to be aware what they are, and has been discussed in details on the workshop and also in the tutorials. Now, only in this week, only in this test, I will talk about regulations. And regulations is coming from the concept of that because those financial institutions are special and they provide all those type of services, if they fail in doing this, they actually would harm the economy. And this is why the policymakers and the regulators come to the picture. So they come up with some type of regulations. And maybe there is one question or 2 questions. I think one question about these regulations. So we are talking about the regulations are covering something like there are 5 areas of regulations. Safety, and it's mentioned in the slides of week 1. But don't stress on that. It will be one question, which means I think why regulation is important, and some of the regulation. For example, when we talk about safety, we are talking about diversifications, credit risk controls, and all those issues. But also, based on week one, we are talking about those concepts. Now, those concepts you have to be aware. The concept of diversification in financial institutions. Diversification is the most important issue. How we manage liquidity through diversification. How we manage price risk through diversification. And I think there's 2 or 3 questions about this diversification. We have negative externalities. And this is also how really bank able to receive liquid assets and get very illiquid, they're really able to receive liquid liabilities, and give very illiquid assets, like when you take a saving account money, a deposit from saving account, and make it an housing loans. This is what you call the asset transformation, and still in the same time honor liquidity. So what is this? How do they do that? Of course, when we talk about diversification, but in different issue, and we discussed this in tutorial 1 when we talked about the diversification benefits to manage price risk and manage liquidity. Now, this part will take 8 questions. All those concepts take 8 questions, no calculation, nothing. Now we go to actually week 2. Week 2 is the bulk, which will have 12 questions. Now you have to be, and we have killed this issue of refinancing risk and reinvestment risk, and how do they come? For example, here when you finance long-term assets for 2 years from a liability of 1 year. Now, in the end of 1 year, these liability people wants their money, and therefore the interest rate could change. And if it change, it can go to 10, it can go back down to 9, or go up to 11. So in this case, there is a risk. And the problem is, for me, if I have to take or renew this liability with the new rate, which is 11%, then in this case, I have a problem. I don't have a problem here, and I don't have a problem here. And we have already talked about this in details. Now, the opposite side is the reinvestment risk, which means I have a liability of 2 years, and I finance an asset for 2 years. So I have to pay for these guys 10% for 2 years. I lend it for 12% for the first year. Hopefully, in the second year, I will find another borrower with the same rate. But if the interest rate change and drop to 11%, then I have something called reinvestment risk. Now, I can phrase those examples or those issues in different structure, and you should be able to understand it. I think we have questions about this, and the old tests I will upload for you. We have questions also in the workshop 2. We clearly show that issue. Now, this is also the horizons. You should be aware. How do we do this? This is actually the asset. This is how banks do the repricing model. They divide it to horizons, and in each horizon, they have their assets and liabilities that mature in the same horizon, and the gap of the same horizon. So this gap can be plus or minus, which means, for example, in this 1 to 3 months, the gap is minus 30, which means I have to pay a liability of 40, and I receive only $10 of assets in that horizon, which means the liability, the other 30 is scattered in other assets and other maturities, which means now I have to borrow with the new rate. If the rate change, then there is a problem, which means if the rate, because I have a minus and then the rate goes up, I have to borrow with the new rate. So in this case, I want you to understand that this is how banks do it for the repricing model. They calculate the gap, but more importantly, they calculate the C gap, which is accumulated gap. So the accumulated gap, for example, for this one is actually minus 65, as you can see, minus 65, which is from 6 months, from 1 day to 1 year, we have a minus 65. So if they can ask you to calculate for 1 year, then in this case, actually, you are taking all those prior horizon until you reach to here, as we did here, and we get 650. Now, this is the pricing model, repricing model, which is easy. It has its weaknesses, it has its strength, as we explain it. And the way we do it according to 2 steps. One, calculate the gap, and then multiply the gap, which is a dollar value, times the change in the interest rate. And then we can see the impact on our balance sheet and our income statement or the net interest income. Now we come also to this issue, which is the duration. Now the duration here, I think I talked about this in the tutorial, and I talked about it in the slides. See, this is I told you a loan of 30,000 for 3 years, right? Now, if it is for 3 years, the repricing model will take this loan of 30,000 and make it rate sensitive asset that will mature in 3 years, because we have year 1, year 2, year 3. The duration model takes a very advanced and progressive way and say, no, actually, it's not 3,000. The impact is not actually 30, but less than that, because there is some amounts coming during the life, and these amounts, when they come with their present value. So they come with this duration model, and they come with this formula, which is you just calculate the present value times the time here, and you divide it by the present value of all those payments, as we did here, and we can get the duration. Now, this is the duration of the assets of this asset, and you can have durations to so many assets, and add them up and average them up, as I'm going to talk about it in a while. So this becomes 1.95 years, while it was actually 3 years. Now, based on this, the duration model does not actually count for the net interest income, which is an income statement, but rather the change in equity. And equity is actually, the equity is the capital. And the capital is coming from accounting basis, is coming actually from the net income. The net income after dividends, whether you have dividends or not dividends, what is left or all of it will go to the equities and become part of the equities. So if you look at the duration model, actually, it takes the income statements, the change in the income statements coming from the net income, and also it takes into consideration the changes of the interest rate in the market. When we price our assets and liabilities according to the market, we have to discount them according to the current rate, as I mentioned. So if you have a 100 million of assets and you want to take the market value of today, and the asset is matured end of this year, you have to discount it for 1 year for 10%. If the interest rate is 10%. If the interest rate goes to 11%, then you will discount it according to the 11%, which will be less. This applies to assets and liabilities, and therefore the duration model take to that consideration when they measure this comprehensive measure of the impact on the bank. Now, this is the formula which we use, and unfortunately, and this is just an example. For example, when we have an asset of 5 years, duration of asset, duration of liabilities of 3 years, and we have this balance sheet which is 100 asset, 100 liabilities, and the equity is 10, then actually you can calculate this one, which is the duration, the change in equity, duration of asset, minus K, which is K is the leverage, which is 90 over 100, times the duration of liabilities, times the assets, times, and you can get this now, 0.97. Now, somebody would say, what do we mean if the interest rate is increasing? If the interest rate is increasing and your duration of assets is higher than your duration of liabilities, 3, then in this case, you are actually damaged from the asset side more than you are gaining from the liability side. And overall, the impact will be minus. And this is, now I have also, I think in the tutorial, tried to bring you this example and the workshop. You can look at it if you like, but for example, this is when we have a comprehensive one. Here we talk only about one asset. When we have these liabilities with the capital, which is 100, when we have the assets, which is 100, this is the duration, this is 0.1 year, 0.50 year, which is 6 months, 0.45 years, this is in years, as you can see. And then, if you want to calculate now the formula, first I calculated just for you the gap. And then if you look at the formula, this is the gap actually. And this is now the impact. See, when the interest rate is 1% and you have your liabilities is higher than your assets duration, actually are gaining. Now, if you just say, and if you want to convert it, say, maybe I will make this one like 0. Oh, sorry. I will make this one like actually, I think I lost this one. Yeah, so it's minus 13 here. Now let me say, for example, if I make this one duration of liabilities, I make it like 0. And therefore now the as you can see, if the duration of liabilities is less than the duration of the assets, and the interest rate is actually going up, now in this case, I'm making the duration of the assets is higher than the duration of the liabilities. As you can see, I'm damaged here. It's minus, this is what I lost. Now, if the interest rate is decreasing, for example, and this is -1, this is just -1%. See, the drop is now different, which is decreased actually. So in other ways, you can play with this. I don't mean to, this was a final exam question. I just want to train you. I may give some of those concepts because the duration will be there. Now, I will not ask you something like this. It will be easier than this. Maybe one concept, or I will give you an asset where you can calculate the duration of it or whatever, like what we did here. This is just when we calculate the duration of one asset, for example, here, something like this, but not more than that. I want you to understand the concept of, duration and the price risk also, the duration and the repricing risk, repricing model. I uploaded for you test 1 and test 2, old ones. This is test 2 with the solution. Look at them. If you have any question, ask me. I uploaded also for you test 1 with some explanations here. So you can look at them, please. And if you have any questions, we can talk about it. This is the yellow one is the explanations. Nothing more to say here. I don't know what else to say, but I think everything should be okay. It will be, as I told you, 20 questions. Most of it will go to part two. Now, in part two, we are talking about the interest rate risk, but also we talk about the risk matrix when we define the other risks. You know, what is, country risk? What is foreign exchange risk? What is, if there is a question about the other risk, it will just tell you what is it, not more, not less. I think with this video, with the all tests, with the workshop 1 and 2, forget workshop, the introductory workshop. The introductory workshop, forget it. Just look for workshop 1, the spatialness, workshop 2, which we have, and tutorial 1 and tutorial 2. Not the introductory tutorial, tutorial 1 and tutorial 2. Forget anything about trends. Forget anything about, this, anything about, I think in the slides we print something about trends and whatever, and some data about, information about the banks and some statistical numbers, and some reports, whatever about the industry, no problem about that. All I want you to know is to know the concept, and you can see test 1 and test 2 explaining this. I'd like to thank you very much. I think I'm done with this. If you have any question, let me know. I want you all to score, and I wish you the best. I will see you. Maybe I will give you the results after the test on Tuesday. Otherwise, I will, moderate it and upload it later on. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Bye-bye.